So welcome back. Previously on this channel, I released a series of videos showing how to deploy Laravel to Amazon AWS in a very manual process. We took, I think it was like 7 steps, and we started with 0, and then we ended up with a complete deployment. So it was fully functional, we had a domain attached to it, and everything was functioning great. In the next couple of videos, I want to cover an important topic, which is infrastructure as code. So previously, we manually built all of the instances, we manually built the VPC, and we manually provisioned Ubuntu, we manually installed Supervisor. And of course, you could document how to do it manually and have someone, repeat those steps every single time, but there's a much better way to do it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take all of those steps, those manual steps, and we're gonna create code from that. So we're gonna have infrastructure as code. And we're going to store that infrastructure as code and then execute it whenever we want to rebuild this environment. So let's get started with that. So just a quick recap of where we are. So last time we did this monolithic deployment, again, 7 or 8 videos on that. Today we're here. We're on the DevOps automation, and we're going to do this infrastructure as a code step. Not going to spend a lot of time. We did this last time. If you want more details, we're just going to skim through this very quickly on this one. But Laravel has kind of these 4 tiers. There's a web tier, which is nginx PHP, and we're going to pull our code into our environment. There's a database, and we've got either SQLite or MySQL workers, which we're using Supervisor to kind of run jobs that are pulled off a Redis queue. And we have a cron job that constantly puts new tasks on the Redis queue so that the workers can pull those tasks off and complete them. I am deploying this sample Laravel application, which is pretty much out of the box, only a few minor changes. We talked about those last time. And we're still dealing with a monolithic application. We're talking about scaling in future videos, but for now, all of these tiers, we're going to put all of these on one EC2 instance. And the last time we did these 7 steps, we completed them all, and we did them all very manually. This time we're going to use some infrastructure as code to help us along. So step number 1 is we want to provision the infrastructure in AWS. And if you recall, this is the infrastructure that we wanted to provision. We have one EC2 instance and a public subnet in one VPC that spans multiple availability zones. So our very first step is we want to create this infrastructure that you see on the screen in Amazon AWS. And so we're going to take care of that next. And so what we're going to use to automate the deployment in Amazon AWS is we're going to use CloudFormation. Now in CloudFormation, you can create what are called stacks. And once you have a stack created, you can deploy that stack. So a stack is consisting of all of that infrastructure that we had specified earlier, the VPC, the subnets, the security groups, the EC2 instance, all of that is in the stack. Once you have that defined, then it's pretty easy just to deploy that stack. So we're going to look at my existing stacks. I already have a Laravel-demo stack, and I kind of backed into this stack definition based upon what we had deployed earlier. I used this infrastructure as code generator to kind of scan what I currently have deployed in Amazon AWS. And then from there, I could pick certain things and then create a template from that. What came out of that was overly verbose. I didn't need to specify all of the information that was in that stack. I also leaned on this gist from GitHub, and this gist is about creating a VPC with 2 public subnets and 2 private subnets, which is exactly what we wanted. And it's kind of more streamlined. So if you look in here, it only has kind of what's necessary. So combining this gist plus the data that I got from this infrastructure's code generator, I was able to kind of create what we're going to look at here in a little bit. So again, in that DevOps repo that I already shared with you, there is a CloudFormation directory. And there's 2 files in there right now. We're not going to cover the Route 53 one today. That's still kind of a work in progress for me. But we are going to cover the monolith.json stack. And my stack is using JSON for the format. And you can see under resources, there's a list of resources starting with the VPC. And I'm not going to cover everything line by line. We're going to scan from top to bottom. You can see what's all in here. But all the different resources have a name. They all have a type. So this first type is a EC2 VPC instance. And then you can set properties on every single type. I tried to put tags in here so I could easily later come back and identify these resources and delete them. But it's not really necessary because when you delete a stack, it automatically goes and deletes everything that it created. So here's a VPC instance. Here's the internet gateway. which is, again, it's an EC2 Internet Gateway instance. And then you can tie things together. So for example, here's an Internet Gateway attachment that has a property of a VPC, and it refers to this VPC that we created up here that has this name, VPC. So whenever you see this ref VPC, it's referring to a resource that was already kind of in the template. Same thing here, another ref. Here we're creating that public subnet number 1 resource. It's in the reference VPC, it's in a certain availability zone, and we're setting it CIDR block. Same thing with private subnet number 1. Reference VPC, availability zone, and CIDR block. The availability zone here is the same thing as the public one, which is right above it. So those two are in the same availability zone. And then we have a public subnet number 2 and a private subnet number 2. Same thing. They're in the same availability zone as each other, but different than the previous ones. So after that, we created the public route table and everything that's associated with that public route table. And again, I backed into this mostly by using that infrastructure as a code generator, but you can see all the instances that are here. So there's a route table that's associated with our VPC. There is a public route that's associated with that route table and also with that internet gateway that we created earlier. And then there's 2 subnet associations. Here's the first subnet one, here's the second one. This is for public subnet number 1 to give it access to the internet. And here's the one associated with public subnet number 2 to give it access to the internet. Then we created a private route table also, so with its subnet associations. Here we create that security group. So if you remember, the security group we created last time had port 22, which is SSH, had port 80, which is HTTP, had port 443, which is HTTPS. I also, because you'll see in a second, I'm making this a little bit more robust, but I'm opening up port 8000, 8001, 8002. So those are available also. You can drop these if you don't need them. You'll see how I'm using them in a little bit. And then down here, finally, we get to the EC2 instance, and we're deploying this to our public subnet number 1. It has the associated security groups. And this is a key part of this instance also, is this user data. User data on these Amazon EC2 instances is content that is executed when the instance is created. It's not when it's started every time, but only when it's initially created. I am feeding in some bash script. And so what we're doing is we're git cloning that DevOps repo that I just showed you from GitHub. So I'm pulling that into a directory on the instance called usr/local/bin/deploy. So that code will become available to us. And then I'm running a script that's part of that code, which is create aliases. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to that code. So now that we've gone over that stack JSON file, let's talk about how we're going to use this. We're going to create a new stack. We're going to select with new resources. It'll build all these resources fresh for us. We have 3 options at the top. Choose an existing template, which is the one that we have. We have an existing template, so we're going to use this one. But you could also use a sample template or build it from the application composer. The template, you can specify where the template is. So this template could exist in an S3 bucket, so you could use it from there. It's on my local disk, so I'm just going to use this one. And we're going to select this monolith.json template. And we're going to click open. Click next. We have to put a stack name in here. I think I'm doing version 7. I'm not going to change anything on this page at all. You could add additional tags, permissions, some different policies and things, but we're just going to click next. Now we're just reviewing it. And we're going to submit. At this point, Amazon AWS has taken that template that we just uploaded, and it's going to build out that infrastructure. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look and see what all the events are here. Just keep refreshing. So we'll refresh this. You can see it's already kind of built the VPC and everything else that's in our stack. It's going to go through and just keep building it all out. While it's building that out, I do want to review one more thing over here. On the EC2 instance, one of the properties that we set is we set this key name. And that is the key name pair that we generated last time. So we already have this Laravel _demo key name pair. Amazon AWS generate a PEM file, which we already downloaded to our desktop. And that's how we're going to be able to connect to the instance that it creates using the CloudFormation stack. So after a bit of time, it's finally completed building the stack. You can see it says create completed here. Let's hop on over to our EC2 instances. You can see that there's one EC2 instance running. This is the new one that it was just created for us. So this is the IP address from it. So I'm going to copy that IP address. Now we have a terminal window open, and I am on my desktop. I'm on a directory on my desktop called Laravel_demo. And what I have in this directory is I have the Laravel_demo.pem file, which is the PEM file that we created the last time that we were here building this monolithic app. So we're going to use this now to SSH in. And the user is Ubuntu. And I have the IP address on my clipboard, so we'll just paste it there. First time connecting to this new machine, it's not sure that we want to, but yes, we recognize this one. Sorry, folks. On that one, I actually didn't specify the PEM file. I just said Laravel demo. Let's try it again using the actual key this time. And now we're actually connected in. So you can see now that we have this Ubuntu instance, much easier than we did last time. Last time we manually had to build all the VPC and the subnets and the EC2 instance, and that was a great experience, but this is really how you want to do it in production. You want to have these CloudFormation templates.